Hello and welcome back to Jordan Gets a Hobby, in which I am Jordan and I seek to reclaim some of the hobbies from my youth. But today I'm taking a bit of a breather from the polymer clay, from revisiting some old hobbies, and instead I'm going to talk about some things that I wish I could tell my younger self. As you may or may not know, I work with teenagers. I always have since I graduated from my undergrad. So it's been 10 whole years of me working, whether that's in teen pregnancy prevention or as a clinical therapist with high-risk youth, or now working at a school with a lot of high academic achieving youth. I spend a lot of time talking to kids, and over the last 10 years, I've had a lot of similar conversations with kids, regardless of their background, regardless of their socioeconomic status. Kids, yes, they're gonna have some different issues that emerge, but at their core, developmentally, they're all going through some pretty similar things. And I was also going through some similar things when I was a teenager. So I'm gonna go through 5 things that I wish I could go back and tell my younger self. So if you happen to have an older kid or a teenager in your house, or maybe you happen to be a youth yourself and you just wanna sit here and contemplate whether any of this resonates with you, come along for the ride. Number 1 is that you have the ability to explore anything that interests you. This is a conversation that I have pretty frequently with a lot of the kids that I talk to. It's the idea that even in this age of social media, where people do have the ability to try and judge you for basically anything and everything, you still have the ability to try and to fail and to try again with relative anonymity. First, you can do yourself a favor by not posting absolutely everything that you're doing. But second, by understanding that everyone your age is pretty much operating functionally as a narcissist. And that is not a clinical diagnosis, but a developmentally appropriate life stage. Your peers are not terrible people, but they are hyper-focused on themselves. How they look to others, if they measure up, how they are going to do on their presentation in 15 minutes. But logically speaking, if everyone around you is hyper-focused on what they are doing and how they are being perceived, then they cannot be expending that same amount of energy to be hyper-focused also on what you are doing. If they are diverting their attention to you, it's most likely just to actually make a comparison against themselves. Like, am I measuring up to this person next to me? Do I feel like I am better, or I can match what this person in front of me is doing? It's not actually about you, it's about them. Therefore, that means that you actually have the sweet, sweet freedom to pursue anything and everything that interests you, whether that is a sport or an instrument or something artistic, or maybe like a new fashion style you want to try out, knowing that the people around you don't actually care as much about how you look doing this thing as you care about how you look doing it. And honestly, if you are able to embrace this as a youth, it will be your superpower. Number 2, following up on that, I would tell myself that the best way to raise your self-esteem is to think of yourself less. Not to think less of yourself by putting yourself down, but to simply divert your attention from yourself to the people and to the world around you. I have worked with a lot of teens where they might mention, or their parents might talk about, if they could just raise their self-esteem, if they could just love themselves more, if they could just repeat some affirmations in the mirror until suddenly they believe it, then everything would be better and everything would fall into place for them. However, speaking from experience, I found that the longer amount of time that I spent in front of the mirror, the more miserable I would become. Like, do you ever start saying a word so much and you repeat it over and over again until suddenly you lose all grip of reality and that word no longer seems like a word? That same thing used to happen to me when I was scrutinizing myself in front of a mirror. The longer I sat and looked at myself, the more hideous I became. However, when I stepped away from the mirror and retrained my focus to other things, whether that was building a skill or becoming a trusted friend to somebody, or giving my attention to something that needed me, like a pet, I found that my confidence naturally built a lot more than it would if I was just chanting affirmations in front of a mirror like it was some kind of magic spell. Number 3, you will never arrive. So this was a conversation that I remember having with an older friend when I was in my early 20s. As a teenager, or maybe when you're in college or directly after college, you might have all these big plans and big ideas about what your life is supposed to look like, what a successful life for you looks like. And once you are able to tick off all of those boxes, that will mean that you have arrived and that you've achieved this fulfillment and self-actualization, all those beautiful things. This mindset often leaves you feeling like you're running behind or like you're not doing enough. But what I remember most about that conversation is not necessarily this idea that, oh, you'll just never arrive because if you meet your goal, you're just going to move the goalpost further so you'll never reach it. That's not really what I mean. Like, for example, at one point in my life, my main goal was to get my master's and then work full-time as a clinical therapist. And once I achieved that goal, it wasn't that it just wasn't enough for me. Like, oh, I'm just this insatiable me monster and I just need more recognition and more clients and more money. It was that after I had spent a decent amount of time working in this environment, I was starting to recognize that my work was no longer aligning with my personal convictions as my faith had grown in the person and the work of Jesus and what I believed true healing was and where it comes from. So this idea of not arriving has more to do with the idea that you are going to be constantly changing and growing and learning from the experiences that you have. You do the best you can with the resources that you have right now. Your ideas of what is worthwhile for you to pursue are naturally going to change and evolve over time because your existence is dynamic. I would honestly be more concerned for you if you have the exact same goals now that you did 5 years ago when you first laid out your 5-year plan. So instead of spending all this time thinking about where you think it is that you need to arrive, maybe a better question would be, what is going to be serving as your ultimate compass? Which direction are you intending to go? And what or who are you allowing to be that ultimate guide for you? Number 4 is this, and I really need you to hear me when I say this: stop eating so much breakfast cereal. In the year 2003, I was in junior high, and I can tell you that if YouTube had existed back then, and if I was doing a what I eat in a day style vlog, in the morning, it would be a bowl of Lucky Charms or a bowl of Captain Crunch peanut butter crunch for breakfast, a bag of French fries and a Fruitopia from the school cafeteria for lunch, sometimes as well a Snickers ice cream bar. And then when I got home, approximately 4 to 6 EL Fudge sandwich cookies prior to dinner. So if I could, I would just go back to junior high me and maybe encourage me to eat a little bit more produce. An apple, some blueberries, maybe just a cucumber. I would ask myself to slow down and maybe give a little bit of consideration as to how this food might be affecting me. I was a kid, so I was supposed to have boundless energy, right? And yet I always felt tired. I always felt like I could just take a nap at any given moment. And I would think it was this inscrutable mystery as to why I had a cavity nearly every time I went to the dentist. Newsflash, Fruitopia is terrible for you. Sure, it has 100% of your daily value of vitamin C, but at what cost? Lots of things have vitamin C. Lots of other things. Peppers, sweet peppers. Lots of it. And finally, number 5, continue making time for the things that you enjoy. When I was 17, I would regularly spend hours of my time playing the drums for my youth group's worship band, as well as teaching myself all the dance moves from some famous music videos. Can you imagine if I had kept those things up until now? I was 17 years old 16 years ago. If I had actually practiced my paradiddles for the last 16 years, I would be unstoppable. If I had kept dancing and maintained some level of flexibility, then maybe I wouldn't be dealing with 2 weeks of tension headaches every time I sleep with my neck at the wrong angle. My quality of life would really only be better. So I don't mean this to say never quit anything. If something no longer interests you, then of course, let it fall by the wayside. It no longer serves you, set it to the side, snuff it out, bury it under a bushel basket, that's you. You do you. Actually, don't. That's terrible advice. I don't suggest that people just do them. But yeah, let it fall by the wayside so that you can pursue a new interest. But don't drop something just because it feels like you don't have the time. Trust me, you do have the time. Maybe not as much time as you used to, but there is some time to pursue that thing. Just take a look at your average screen time usage. There is time there. I'm indicting myself with that as well. I have time there. So that's everything. That's all my advice. It's not all of it, but it is 5 things, so that is a start. So I hope that you appreciated this time that we had together. If you are an adult, what is some advice that you would give to your younger self? Or maybe if you have a child who's that age, what's some advice that you hope that they would glean from you? And if on the off chance that you somehow find this and you're an actual youth, I would love to hear from you too and see if any of this was actually helpful to you. Take care of yourself. Maybe eat some cucumbers. If you're feeling sick, maybe eat a sweet pepper instead of a Fruitopia, and I'll talk to you soon.